I was sitting at the desk in 2006 and the phone rang and a woman said, introduced herself and gave me her name. And she says, I have some Washington family memorabilia.
Whoa.
She said, do you think your museum would like to have it? I said, yes, ma'am.
Let me think.
I think.
Hi, this is Lynn Widmeyer, and I'm here at the Jefferson County Museum with my special guest, Doug Perks, who is the historian of the museum. Doug is a very well-known and well-respected historian of our county. He has written extensively, and we'll talk about your book a little later. But today he is here to share with us his 3 favorite exhibits at the Jefferson County Museum. Before we jump into that, which I am really anxious to hear what your choices are, because of course I have my own choices. Tell us a little bit about what is it about history that fascinates you so?
The easier answer is you can't live in Jefferson County and not be in love with history.
Well, that's true.
But it started for me when I was a kid. I was a tenderfoot scout, and it was 1959, and our troop was invited to do community service at Harper's Ferry. The community was commemorating the 100th anniversary of John Brown's raid. And if you've been to Camp Hill on the Storer College campus, Anthony Hall, which is today the training center, beautiful green lawn in front of that.
It is gorgeous.
Beautiful, beautiful. And that's where they had a facade of John Brown's fort. So I was there on the Saturday when they reenacted the capture of John Brown.
I'll be darned.
And I can still hear them break through the door of the engine house and bring John Brown out. He already had a bandage on his head, but I got the bug right there. That's when I first started to know that there was a lot going on in this county, and I wanted to know as much as I could to find out what that story was.
I think what you're saying is it just reinforces the importance of taking kids to historic places.
Walking in the footsteps of history, yes.
So you were in education for 30 years. Didn't you work for the
Yes.
local schools?
I was a teacher, history, of course. And, you know,
those lucky students.
Well, and I've had a lot of good luck.
Now, when did you become the historian of this museum?
Came here in 2004. If you love Jefferson County history, can you be in a better place?
No, you can't.
So,
and that leads us to, we have this wonderful resource, this wonderful museum. And can you share with us, what are your 3 favorite exhibits that are on display here?
Will do.
And why they are?
And this isn't easy.
Well, no, because there's so much.
Yeah. But I was sitting at the desk in 2006, and the phone rang, and a woman said, introduced herself and gave me her name, and she says, I have some Washington family memorabilia.
Whoa.
She said, do you think your museum would like to have it? I said, yes, ma'am.
Let me think.
I think. And she gave us, now she was, the Washington family, George Washington's father had 2 wives. And
not simultaneously.
No. Contrary to what you may read. And George and his 3 brothers and sister were part of the second family. And his mother was Mary Ball. And that's where this woman's family was. She was part of the Ball family. So she had this letter that came down through her family that was written by Colonel Burgess Ball, who had married Charles Washington's daughter. And it was his responsibility when Charles Washington died to send General Washington a letter advising that Charles had died. And she had the letter, which General Washington...
This gives me goosebumps. Goosebumps, I'm telling you.
She had the letter that General Washington wrote back in response and gave it to our museum. So it reflects a couple of things. First of all, you can bet when the word got out that we had that letter, Mount Vernon was on the phone.
I bet they were.
And we declined their offer to take the letter and decided to keep it here. The other thing it did, we know George Washington as a general. We know George Washington as a president. This letter was George Washington as a brother. And he talked about being now the only surviving member of his family.
Gosh.
His brother
So
John.
many people can relate to that position of being the
absolutely,
last member of the
absolutely.
family.
Brother John was dead. Brother Sam was dead. Now Charles was dead. Betty had died. And this is written September 22nd, 1799. And on December the 10th, the general will be gone.
Wow. I'm getting more goosebumps.
Yeah. And this woman gave this letter to our museum.
Oh.
It didn't even cost us postage. She sent it to USPS.
How wonderful.
Oh, yeah. Gave us, there's a portrait next to it that is a copy of the Gilbert Stuart. Her family, the Ball family, had 7 copies made in the 19th century by a renowned portrait artist. And this had come down through her family to her. She gave us that portrait.
What a what a generous spirit. And,
Yes.
and I think it's with the play Hamilton, which was
Yes.
such a smash hit. I think it has so reinvigorated interest in George Washington because it really showed him as such a special person. And to have a letter that he wrote here,
And
fabulous.
when you look at the letter, it's the old style. So it's a sheet of paper which is folded up to be an envelope and sealed with the wax seal. And in the upper right-hand corner where he should have put the stamp, he wrote free.
And that's why he was such a good president.
Old tightwad wasn't going to buy a penny stamp, no.
Well, that's going to be a hard act to follow. But
Yes.
what else?
The wagon, which was a light freight wagon, today a van, it delivered furniture for the Sadler brothers. The wagon that they had that delivered their goods carried John Brown to his execution. Wow. And we've got that wagon. So it's been a very important part of the town's history and the county's history and the nation's history.
Indeed, it has.
And never left the county. And when the museum opened in 1965, you can bet that it was the #1 possession of the museum.
So now, what's your third choice?
Number 3.
Yeah.
If you know anything about our history, you know John Brown and you know the Civil War. That's and when this museum first opened, it was dominated by objects that related to that 6-year time period. But the Civil War was over. The county was trying to get back together. And I think one of the most not only unique but important things that happened in 1867 at Harper's Ferry, some of the buildings that used to make guns were given to a group of folks who came to us from Maine. They were missionaries.
Oh.
And in 1867 at the Lockwood House, which was the former paymaster's house up on Camp Hill, a group of missionaries from the Free Will Baptist Church led by Nathan Brackett opened a school for formerly enslaved men and women. And we've got a really nice exhibit that relates to that school. Now,
is that store?
At Storer College. Started as a school.
I didn't know its history.
Run by the Free Will Baptist Church. Nathan Brackett had been here. He was an agent for the Freedmen's Bureau and recognized the need. Harper's Ferry became a source of refuge for formerly enslaved people as the Union Army cleared out the Confederacy and moved it further up the valley. These folks found refuge and sought refuge at Harper's Ferry. There were estimates at the end of the war that as many as 30,000 of these people were here.
Wow. What is here that resonates about that event?
We have an exhibit that, first of all, there's a portrait of Reverend Brackett, and it's done by his wife, Louise, who was a very talented painter. And we have a couple of portraits of her, but especially the portrait that she did of her husband. And then an exhibit that shows some of the kids, some of the events, some of the books that relate to Story
how
College.
wonderful.
Yeah. So those are my three: the George Washington letter, the John Brown wagon, and the Story College exhibit. Keep in mind that most of what you see when you walk around our museum, most of what you see has been given to us. And we are
People
a
are
small,
so generous.
Yes.
So generous.
With a history as deep as we have, there are items here that are directly related to that history. You know, this just isn't a collection of mason jars.
I have a lot of mason jars. Somebody told me you're supposed to fill them with stuff. Now, in addition to sharing the wonderful exhibits here at the museum, you also write extensively. You write for historic newsletters, you write for the local newspaper, and you have just published a book called The Civil War Years in Jefferson County, Virginia, because we were not West Virginia yet. So can you share a few words about what this is about?
Sure.
We know how it ends.
Well, you may not.
Oh, that's a tease.
Try to do three things. Civil War books got to talk about the Civil War.
Yes.
So I do address some, not all, but some of the things that took place from 1861 until the war ended in 65. But the other thing I tried to do, very often we overlook the people who lived here during that time.
Mm-hmm.
So using resources from our museum, letters and a farm journal and a memoir, I tried to tell that story by giving a glimpse, using the words of the people who lived there during this time. Logan Osborne was a farmer at Cabletown, and he was one of our delegates to the secession convention. He voted twice against secession.
Interesting.
And however, when the secession convention said, nope, Virginia is leaving the Union, he accepted that fact, and really what he wrote was the inspiration for my book. Because in a letter to his friend, he said, you know what, I voted twice against secession. I don't think it's right. I think it's disastrous. He said, but in the end, I am a Virginian.
Oh.
And her fate shall be mine.
Oh, I love that. And her fate shall be mine.
And her fate shall be mine.
Now, where can people get this wonderful book?
We have it here in the museum.
There you go. So there's another reason to come to the museum.
Absolutely.
To see these three exhibits that Doug so eloquently described, all the other exhibits, and get his book.
Yep. My friend Todd Coyle has it at Bushel and Peck. It's
probably at the is it at the Harper's Ferry bookstore?
The bookshop at the park in Harper's Ferry. Yep. And Historic Shepherdstown has it. The Antler Museum.
Has Netflix approached you for the film rights yet?
No,
not yet.
No, because they can't find anybody to play me.
Well, I want to thank you so much, Doug, for giving, and I really hope it does encourage people to come visit this wonderful.
It's a gem.
Well, thank you.
It's a gem. Yeah.
And so are you. So there we go. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
you.